Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk a little bit about what today's project is. So we've SR20 swapped the BMW E30. We've got a shoebox Ford, a 1950 Ford that we chopped the front end off and we welded an S10 clip on it, and then we put it on air suspension and we LS swapped it. Ton of stuff on that car. We've worked on scooters, we've worked on motorcycles. We've done garage stuff like workbenches, and we've wired a garage. We've done a lot of things on this channel, but what we haven't yet done, we haven't touched anything electric yet. And this is something that if you listen to our podcast, I've been talking about for a long time, of wanting to get into doing EV swaps on stuff. So what better to get my feet wet than to start playing around with some kids' toys. This thing's already electric. Basically what you've got here is it's maybe like 500 watt electric motor on it, and it runs something like 20 some volts. I'm not sure, it doesn't actually work. I bought it for a couple of dollars and it's not working, but it has the important components on it, like the chassis and the brake, and it has, you know, the axle, the frame, and all of that. That's really what I bought it for, because what's going to be going onto it is is a 3,000 watts, so like roughly 6 times what this motor has in it, and 80 volts of power. So I've actually gotten to ride one that my buddy Charlie built with these exact specs, and it is a blast, we'll put it that way. Now, whether or not the kids are going to be able to still ride it, I don't know. We'll find out. I'm going to try and set it up so that it manages voltage, so that we can drop things down and make it a little bit safer, a little slower for kiddos. But this might just end up being my toy in the end of it. Now, the funny thing is, it's very small. And it's very small by adult proportions, but I have actually seen 6-foot tall dudes riding these things. In fact, Donnie rode one of these, and yes, his knees are pointing up at the sky, but he can still ride it and he can still have some fun with it. So what my plan is I'm gonna stretch this thing. So in addition to making it fit an adult a little bit better, I am also gonna do some silly aesthetic things to it, clean it up, paint it. So kind of a full build, but it shouldn't be too much drama because ultimately it's a kid's toy. So enough chatting, let's get into this thing right now. Interesting, so it lights up. Interesting, okay. So it shows low voltage, but it still has 20, so it should turn it. I don't know that this has a voltage cutoff. So when you look at these things, they're incredibly simple. Electric motor, you got your batteries, so this is a pair of 12 volt batteries, I'm thinking. And then here's your controller. So it's super simple. All this is the brain that just kind of tells all of this to do what it does. This is your throttle. So they have, you know, regular traditional pedals that are basically the same thing, but yeah, this is the trip. So it actually has juice, which makes me think that maybe something about the controller went bad, and that's actually why it's not working. It doesn't really matter because obviously all of that is going in, but it's worth investigating because if this is still good, I'm going to hang on to it for any other projects. Actually, let's see, what is it? Doesn't say its wattage, but you can see how little it is compared to that beast back there. So yeah, this is the guts of it. Very simple. Very simple. We're gonna probably repurpose some of this stuff to use for the new build, like the throttle. If this is still actually working, why not just try and repurpose it? I might do different handlebars later on, and I am actually going to change some of the ergonomics of it as well, but we'll see. We'll see what I actually end up using, but let's keep tearing her down. Let's get the rest of these kind of OEM guts off of it so that I can start doing some of the metal fab work. Look at this guy. It's all stripped down. Now we can start figuring out what the game plan is. All right, guys, so I'm gonna cut and stretch this thing. And now let's talk about how exactly we're gonna do that. So we've got a couple of things to think about. This frame tapers towards the front of it. The tubing on the sides here, these rails, which are actually part of the rigidity of the chassis, plus it looks kind of cool, these are going to have to get cut as well, and they're on a curve. So she tapers and there's a curve on it. Why this is important is when you go to stretch it, if you are patching in pieces, you have to match that curve perfectly, otherwise it's going to look weird. So we've got the same problem with the taper here. Now how I'm going to get around that is I'm actually going to cut back here where it becomes straight. So it's on a curve and then eventually it becomes straight. I'm going to cut on the straight section, then I'm going to cut along the seam and then go straight across and repeat it. And then when you go to slide it back, I'll be able to weld the seam along here. I'm going to try and reproduce this piece here. I might just have to use round tubing to try and make it look similar. This might be a noticeable spot where it's patched. But up here, this is not going to be interfering with anything because the brake comes through back here. The only thing that I got to think about is that there is that little fastener location for the steering setup, but we might be doing something different with the steering anyways. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to cut right up in there, stretch that back, and then I can patch in that section with that 6-inch piece of steel. Now, yes, you're going to be able to see that there's a patch in right there. I'll have to worry about that later on, how to kind of hide that. But I think that this is going to work out kind of cool, and then it's going to be like, I think it's going to look good this way, and then I think it's going to be a little more rigid because you're not just cutting it straight across and then having one big weak point across the whole thing. You're going to kind of spread it out. But by having the nice straight piece, then I can just plop a 6-inch piece of steel in there, weld that across, and then I'll worry about a little bit of bracing, and we'll figure out how to try and make it look okay from the top, because I do want to try and make this look kind of cool. So anyways, that's the game plan. So I'm going to mark these lines and just dive right into cutting it. Okay, I got my lines marked out here. So rather than just having a straight line across the back and just cutting it straight across, I decided to have a little bit of a, basically, it's not going to be a perfect straight line because I want it to be as sturdy as possible when it comes time to weld it all. And there's also one other key piece, or actually two key things. Right here, this is where a brake line runs through, and then the mount is right there. So I want this to kind of stay where it's at. So I'm going to cut there and then kind of follow this line. And then again, right here, I don't want this to be on the exact same line. Both we've got this brake mount for the e-brake thing. But also it's just stronger when you don't have a perfect straight cut like that. So she'll get cut here, and it's pretty damn close to the straight section. So it shouldn't be too obvious when it's cut and stretched. I'm going to try and make it as clean as possible, but we're going to give her a try. This is obviously my first time building one of these things with custom work, so hopefully this works out and it isn't too visible, because this whole section is moving forward 6 inches and the seat is going to be back there. So This actually will be visible, this whole section with the grooves. But yeah, we'll see what it looks like. I mean, in the end, it's really just a silly toy, but if I can help it, I want to make it look as cool as possible. One last thing, the tubes are going to be cut, obviously. I decided I'm going to cut it back here where the weld is, and the whole thing will move forward, and then I'll decide how the tubing is going to work that's going to come up for a wing on the back of it. So I'll probably end up cutting off this bumper, doing something different with that. Maybe it'll be built in with the wing or something. I haven't decided what I'll do with the back of it. I don't want to go too overboard, because yeah, it's just it's just gonna be a silly little karting toy. Anyway, guys, let's start cutting this thing apart. Okay, here we go. Bam. 6 inches longer. Okay, so just tossed it's like a 6 by 24 or 18 or something like that piece. I think it's 24. Underneath, just to kind of get a visual on it. And yeah, it looks cool. I think it's going to be like a better fit for an adult this way. So I definitely think this is the right move. One cool thing, so the way that it was cut, you know, if you cut it back here, basically you can do a 5.5 inch stretch, and these tubes will actually connect enough with the original rear piece that now you've got it braced across there, which I really think is the better move, because you're using, this is a huge part of the structural rigidity. You know, it's original, like you can kind of see, and yes, we're going to be modding this one too. You can see how it's critical to kind of maintaining its strength. So if you can tie that into the old original piece, it's that much better. I thought that I was going to end up having to cut this tube and then having another one coming up with a big gusset. So I think what I'll do is I'll connect these, and then I will still do a gusset to kind of connect to the new piece that is stretching it. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, just looking at it, I think this is going to be a much better adult size to work with. And we already know that the 3,000 watt motor is a lot of power for an adult, so that's cool. This thing might actually work to be an actual adult sized go-kart. And we'll explore some other cool mods later on with it, but for now, let's just get the fab work done. So one thing I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to have to square up the axle on the front to the axle on the back. You do this with anything that you're doing a custom frame on, or if you're, you know, clipping a classic car like we did with that one, how we chopped the whole front clip off of it and put an S10 clip on it. What you got to do is you got to make sure that your wheelbase is exactly the same, or within a certain amount of error, and generally that's right around a 1/16 of an inch or so, unless you happen to have a little bit of adjustment in it. But with a solid axle on the back, you know, your wheelbase, there's a trade-off. You got a solid axle in the back, and this is you know, basically a solid axle in the front. The solid axle in the back is going to have to be pitched one direction or the other to adjust it, which is going to affect the other side. So you want to get this as correct as possible so that it's not kind of fighting itself all the time. Now, granted, this thing is going to probably top out just under 30 mile, or excuse me, under 40 miles an hour, depending on, you know, the gearing. So it's not going to be quite as big of a deal, but you still want to get it all right, because, you know, you're just flying around on this little piece of steel. Anyway, Okay, next thing, we're gonna have to get this all leveled out nicely, get the pieces kind of set where I want them, and then it's gonna be tack welding. We're gonna take some steel over here. Something like this will work. And basically we're gonna brace these pieces together, and that's gonna hold it all in place. You'll see people do that when they're doing major like floor replacements and stuff on classic cars. They'll have tubing that'll run through the inside to make almost like a, it just ties it all together and holds it in place. There, that's my long-winded explanation. So I'm gonna grab another piece like that after we get everything like kind of leveled. And actually I think I'm gonna grind down some of the paint first. It's probably better to do that in 2 pieces. So, okay, let's cut to that. 7/8. 38 7/8. I'll be damned. Okay guys, alright, tossed her up here. Now it's time to start building the rear frame section, and I'm going to put a wing on it. I'm going to have tubing come off of from basically these guys, because what I want to do is try and tie all of the structural pieces together to make it as rigid as possible. And that's going to come off the back. It's going to come off of these side tubes, and it's going to go up towards the back. And the back is going to have a wing. It's not going to sit super high. It's just going to be a little ways off of it. It's strictly for looks. And yeah, it should look pretty hilarious and function really well, I think, hopefully. So the next step then is to cut off the back bumper. I'll probably be taking the front off as well. I think I'm going to make my own bumpers for this because, you know, why not? It's like it's going to be looking so elaborate back here anyways, and these I really don't think do all that much, so having a better bumper sticking off the front and back would be probably better. I mean, really what you want with a bumper is, yes, you want to shield your feet, shield the person, but you know, there's also like the factor of you've got these wheels and tires that are sticking out, so you clip something with this and I mean, you're going flying. You're bending everything and you're going flying. So, yeah, guys, let's just go ahead, remove the rear bumper section, and I need to start cutting this into pieces, and then just kind of start mocking everything up and trying to get something to look pretty good here. So, let's do it. So something just dawned on me. I got the tubes on, kind of bolted a few things down, trying to get a look at where it all is going to be. Welded a pair of these guys on, which I'll explain that in a little bit here. But racking my brain trying to figure out where I'm going to put batteries. So I'm not loving how tall these have to be, because this height allows me to have batteries underneath here. I kind of don't love how much taller the wing is going to be than the rest of the chassis. I was really hoping the wing was going to be like right here. So much lower, and then it'll just like look a little bit more appropriate for the body size, for the chassis size, which I know sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to try and make this thing as cool looking as possible. So I'm trying to figure out where the battery should go. And with the cart that my buddy Charlie built, one consistent issue we have is that these keep getting damaged and batteries keep flying out the back. And he's got batteries mounted on the back side of one of these boxes. And when those bumps hit, these little plastic retainers are breaking and batteries are starting to be able to fall out. So I think what's happening is that, you know, you've got your cart shaped like this, and when you hit a bump, there might be a leveraging effect that's happening. You've got a straight up and down surface. It's going up and then slamming down. So there must be more leverage on the backside here than, say, the center line of the axle. Plus, if you look at this surface, it's straight up and down. When it's slamming down, it might be putting a lot of force tipped this way, which is why these upper sort of tangs or whatever you want to call it, they're supposed to hold the battery in. It's just breaking on the upper part, and then the batteries are able to flop out. So, kind of interesting. So I'm looking at all of this, trying to figure out what to do, and it dawns on me, what about the front side? So, I tested the seat out at this seating position, and it felt way better. Gives me about 3.5 to 4 inches more of space, because this is where the seat used to mount like way up here. So it gives you about another 4 inches of leg room, which I'd still like a little bit more, but that's not bad. And it leaves a ton of room right here. So what if I were to put the batteries behind the seat? And then I got to thinking, well, what if I put the seat on a hinge? So if the seat's on a hinge and it tips forward, and there we go, I'm able to access the batteries, and then you slap this thing back down. Obviously, I'll have to cut off these pieces. I'll do a different seatbelt because I'm going to keep a seatbelt on this thing. Especially if this is going to be hinged. You want a seatbelt that's going to anchor you to the chassis. Then you don't have to worry about, if this is hinged, you're not going to have to worry as much about the seat being secured down on the sort of, it can tilt, but then it has to be like pinned down. Your weight of your body, and then the seatbelt is going to keep you in place. Again, this is not rocket science, but it's, I mean, it's how a lot of go-karts work. But yeah, so we'd have a nice little gap back here where we could stick batteries. So if it folds forward, then there you go, you can access it. So I think I'm gonna go that route. I love that it's all kind of minimalistic and it hides it. Technically, it kind of protects it too. So I think we're gonna try that out.
Okay, guys. So let's talk a little bit about where we're at now. So the front end is welded up. I debated about having these legs kind of curve that way or, you know, the arc this way. And I decided, like, it already looks so crazy with this giant bumper sticking out the front that, like, screw it. I'm going to give it a big derpy smile. Especially if I decide to put a headlight right here, which I'm kind of leaning towards. It's going to have this hilarious kind of Cyclops look to it. But, I mean, why not, you know? It's ridiculous. It's a 80 volt, 3,000 watt electric swap into a Razor scooter. Like, why not make it look hilarious? That one can be the conservative one, you know? That one's not going to get nearly the visual mods as this stupid thing, so why not? Okay, so front end, it's not done. I think I still got to do a little bit of gusseting. I want to try and make it look a little bit more like it belongs with it, like the front, or rather like the main body, because it really looks like it's just kind of hanging out in no man's land. So I'll figure that out. That's later on. I got this piece done, so our gussets are now, they've got a nice tube that's covering it, and that way it's welded on 4 sides because this is where the seat belt is going to bolt onto. So all of that is real tight and very sturdy. Seats tipping up perfectly. That's working out exactly like I wanted it to. So now it's time, I think, to look at the wing. And, you know, these tubes, they're way too tall. So we're not going to have a wing way up here. That's too much. We're going to have it kind of down more in this area. And the way I'm going to do this, so we've got all of this tied together nicely. I might run another tube up here, which will give it a little bit fatter look to this rather than just like a single tube. But I'm not 100% sure yet. All depends on how much material I feel like using. So we're going to have a cross tube that's going to go from one to the other. And then I'm going to actually use, on the front, I'm going to use 3/4 inch wire clamps. So these are like, you know, wiring loom clamps. And they'll wrap around, they'll hang onto the piece of steel that's going across, and then they're going to screw into the underside of the wing. So we'll worry about building the wing here in a little bit. That's going to take a bit of time to try and get right. So that's going to handle it on, like, you know, it's not going to, it's going to want to tip, basically, if I only have it tied in one spot. So I'm thinking about actually doing a tube or a pair of them coming up from the back as a second spot. But the kicker is, I think with that one, I might put adjustment into it. I'm not positive. Because then I can really fine-tune the angle of the wing. Not that it's going to really have any effect when you're only going 40 miles an hour. Like, it's really not going to do anything. But it might look cool if it's got a little bit of a pitch to it. I don't know. Maybe I'll just do it solid and not overthink it, but whatever. It's cool, man. I'm going to get this ridiculous thing done here pretty quick, though. So, all right, let's finish up this wing, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, hear me out. Yes, I am going to use wood for this. There's a lot of different materials that I could use, but I could bend up steel tubing and try and make a metal wing, but I feel like that's just, like, I'm probably adding another 10 pounds to the back end of it, and it's going to cost quite a bit more to do that. So here's the plan. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this thing at 27 inches, which is basically flush with the wheel and tire. I got to cut this thing at 27 inches, and what I'm going to do is, because everything else on this has curvature to it, I'm not going to have this thing with 90-degree edges. I just don't think that's going to look right. So what the game plan is I'll cut it at 27 inches, and I'm actually going to give it a little bit of a curve on both sides. Not significant, but still with the 90-degree ends, so that I can put end caps on it and really kind of give it a authentic motorsport wing look. And then, yeah, I think at that point, it might just be like a couple more little fabrication things that I've got to do, and then I think we might be able to finally move on to the next step, which is probably going to be mocking up all of the wiring. So let's get this done. Nice. Actually, that's not bad. Okay, so I got it made, and it turned out pretty damn good. So you can see that it doesn't necessarily have like a consistent curve, but it's got, you know, some angle to it, and then I rounded the center point here. I think it's better than nothing. Like, I would have preferred it to be on one big arc, but I think this looks better than a straight piece. It definitely looks more finished. So I'll do the little splitter pieces that come off the sides here as well. And I haven't decided what exactly I'll make that out of. I might use like plexi or something, just to save on all of the steel costs that I've endured from this thing. Not that it's that bad, but I'd rather not use my nice 1/8 inch plate to make those sides out of it. Like, plexi would be just fine. I am also gonna do some kind of support from the back, I think. I think it might be valuable, because it's for sure gonna want to tilt. Like, with these clamps, I don't think they're gonna quite hold it in place good enough. Also try, but I don't think I want them to be able to move that well. So, yeah, we'll do that, and then I think I want to do some kind of something that's gonna tie up to the center here, and then just like one more little bit of support right there. And then I might do a rear bumper on this thing. I haven't completely decided yet. Not sure I really need it. Might actually be kind of nice to have that open, with the exception of that one support for the wing. So yeah, guys, all right. Alright guys, new day, and we got the frame back from the sandblasters. So, here we go. It's blasted. It's all like exactly the same profile. The guy did an amazing job on this thing. It's super clean. And at this point, usually I would pick out all of the little quirks with it, and I would decide if there's anything that I feel I need to redo. But it's all pretty close, and it is just a silly little toy that's gonna get the crap kicked out of it anyways, so I'm not gonna be too anal retentive. If this is a motorcycle frame or a bicycle frame I was building, or roll cage, or tubular bumpers or something like that for a car, I'd be much more persnickety about every little thing, but it's just such a silly little toy. I mean, I shouldn't be too obsessive about it. So now comes the fun part of powder coating. Now I've been doing this for, I don't even know,
little, probably over 10 years. I mean, 11, 12, I don't even know. It's somewhere in there. And, you know, I can do all the fun two-stage stuff where it's like a really wild color, like my ruckus frame, or like the valve covers on the shoebox Ford. All of that stuff is shot in a two-stage, and it gives it just a really wild color. With this one, again, because it's going to get the crap kicked out of it, I just picked out a really nice metallic single-stage color to shoot it in. So we're going to do that, and then once it's done, I will show you guys exactly what I chose. So let's get right to powder coat.
Okay, so, all right, now that it's in the oven, we've got it's got to warm up and reach a certain cure temperature. But I'd say that, last I checked it was right around 340. Some of the parts were a little bit above, some were a little bit below, so I kind of pull an average. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of set the timer. Going to give it about, this is sort of a poly blend. I'm going to give it about 15 minutes, 12 minutes or so, flipping off the oven, and I'm going to actually let it just hang in there because it's such a pain in the ass to take out. It's probably better to just let it fully cure and harden in there, and that way when I go to take it out in the morning, I'm holding a cool part. It's going to be much easier to manipulate than trying to pull it out right now. So I think I'll probably just end up doing that. So, all right, we'll see you in the morning.
Oh, that's rad. Oh yeah, maybe a tiny bit light right there, but not bad at all. Wow.
Ooh, that is pretty. Wow. I thought for sure this was going to be a little bit lighter under here because it was real hard to get powder in there. This turned out really good. Man, this color is cool. So I had this color already sitting around because I was going to do a set of wheels in it. Yeah, teeny bit light right through there, but that's not the end of the world. It's going to be kind of subtle. All this will be covered. Ah, there's one light spot in there. I was having a hell of a time trying to get powder into that area. Yeah, tiny bit light back here, but really not bad. Yeah, all in all, this actually turned out real decent. Yeah, so I already had this color sitting around because I was going to do a set of wheels in it. And I had a ton of it. You got to use it. So I thought, well, what the heck? As much as I'd like to do something really wild and obnoxious colored for this build, kind of figured like, well, why not? I got it. It's a gorgeous color. And when you see it in the sun, it really pops. So now we get to do the fun part. Now we can actually start putting this thing back together. Oh, yeah, tiny bit light right here. But still not bad. And actually a little bit of that's going to be covered anyways by that centerpiece. But yeah, guys, let's fire up the heat in here and get this a little bit better set up so that we can start putting it back together. Okay, so let's talk quickly about the brake cable setup. So, the original brake cable is really only meant for the stock length. So, you can kind of visualize if it's right there and it's hooked up correctly, it runs out of steam right about there. So it's obviously going to miss the mounting point on the axle where it hooks up to the brake. So this guy has to go. So what you do, just go to any bicycle store, or I think even Walmart might have these, where it's a cable kit. And get a cable kit with like a conventional brake end on it. And all you gotta do is replace it in the brake handle. I found that I actually had a bent adjuster, but I keep everything, so I have a spare. So I'm just gonna swap all these new parts on. And even though it's gonna be way too long, I will trim it down, because I'll have to trim the sheath and the cable down last. So I'll worry about that once the axle is on there and everything. But I can get this portion of it done now. So do that.
Yeah, this is looking nice. Okay, guys, so next step is I'm going to wire this whole thing independently because the motor plugs into the controller. So all I've got to do is get this big clump of wires inside here so that I can begin wiring up the rest of the pieces. So let's do that now.
Let's see if we can toss some batteries in it and make it work. Yeah, so don't get freaked out if you've got a small arc there, because it is drawing the second you make a connection. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we got power. Ooh, and she's spinning forward. Hell yeah! Sweet. Man, this thing is angry. It's just amazing, the difference. But I suppose that's what happens when you've got 80 volts that's powering it. So, and I definitely got some run out issues, which I'm gonna have to look into, but ladies and gentlemen, it's alive. So, a few things that I need to do. I'm gonna put a braking switch, so a contact switch right here. That's going to actually cut the main battery power feed from the distribution block that's in here. Power block, whatever you want to call it. Because that arc issue that you have when you lock one of the batteries in, maybe you can see it. No, maybe not. But sometimes there's a bit of an arc in there. And the reason for that is it's drawing pretty much from the get-go. So, yeah, you're just making that initial contact. But so I'll probably do something like that. That's so silly. So, yeah, we got her set. Let's see if that brake setup or whatever they call it. Yep, that kills it. So this does still work. And actually it's working, it's wired correctly. So on is truly on in terms of the power. Yep. Yeah, that's so cool. Hell yes. Okay. So the brakes on these are very simple. You've got a drum style, so there's a little piece on here that when it gets pulled, it snugs it down. And this is literally a band, and that's the actual drum itself. Or rather the band, and then that's, you know, kind of the brake face or the rotor. And so when you've got your new cable, you've got a bit of excess, and you've got to trim it so that it will fit inside of this little pocket. Then you need enough spare cable after that so that you can actually attach it. Now, if you look at like the generic amount, obviously it's too much in every way. And you don't want to have this cable underneath it because it's one more thing to get snagged on. So, what you do to trim it is you go to the other side, the handle side, or the brake lever side. You're going to undo it and you're going to pull back the actual cable itself. Then you're going to trim at the length that you want. Now give yourself a little bit of extra space so that it pushes itself into this braking, this little brake adjuster here. And I think what I'll do is I will bolt the brake in now as well. Okay, so we've got the brake. Now what we're going to do pull excess back. As you can see, we need to pull back enough so that we're actually able to cut back here. So you can see that's a couple of feet's worth. Basically, you don't want to pull too much. We're going to go there, and next you'll take a cutoff wheel and a piece of tape. So we're going to give ourselves a little bit of extra Basically going to go right to the bracket. That will mean that it's pushed in a tiny bit. And then I'm going to actually cut onto the tape itself. Alright, so the reason you don't push fast is because you don't want to push steel, it'll create barbs if you push really hard while you're grinding. So you go nice and slow. But, you guys can see, it kind of just naturally goes into this pocket really well. If you want to do a little extra measure, you could actually use shrink tubing over the nut itself, but you got to make sure that you've got it adjusted exactly the way that you want it. Now, go back down, start pushing your cable through, because then you're going to trim your cable. Hook it back up into your brake, the handle. Go. So now, there's no reason why it wouldn't work, but now you can test it out. So from there, you've got the spring-loaded piece. Then, got this guy. There's a little hole in it. That hole is where the cable will slide through. Nice, actually. I figured that this thing was going to be in worse shape, so that worked out really well. I thought the end of the cable was going to be more frayed. Slide that in. Then make sure that the little nose. So you'll make sure that the little nose on the end of your band here is in the spring itself. So have your 10mm ready. I take a screwdriver. After pulling up on the band a little bit, I'll slide the screwdriver underneath it, and that will kind of bring the band closer to the drum itself, or the braking surface. And now I start working from there. So snug this up. And you don't need anything on the other side because the cable itself is going to be what kind of keeps it in place. Snug it up until that cable doesn't want to move. Release. And now you can start testing it out. See what the brake does. So, fully grabbed, I can still spin it. But it is providing some braking force, some resistance. So, now we can work from there. So, I'm going to put that screwdriver back in. See if I can go at it from another angle. Yep. And loosen this up and pull that cable nice and tight. Okay. Then from here, we're going to work on it on the adjusters. So I think we can get a little bit better braking force out of it. So there's no resistance. It's not fighting at all right now. Now we can start playing around with adjustment. And the more that you work with the adjusters,
the more it's going to sort of shorten the sheath in the center of it and pull back the cable itself. So I'm going to work with adjusting right here because we'll want to save as much adjustment for the handle side of things for later on because it'll be easier. You don't want to flip this upside down every single time. At least that's the approach that I take. And you can see it's starting to pull now. Every time you turn this thing, it is actually, you can see the cable is getting a little bit tighter. But keep in mind that this also does shorten the throw. Oh yeah, now it's starting to get nice and tight. Yep, there we go. Lot more force that it's applying. So let's go a little bit further. We've got a really nice positive brake handle. I'd say that we're about halfway adjusted. Still not grabbing, which is great. This is starting to look like the way that it was too. So let's snug this down. In the future, because this is a 3/4 inch axle, we might look at doing some custom brake work on one of these, but we're not going to today. All right, we'll test her out one more time. Let's see what it does. Real firm, real positive. Oh yeah. Yep, we got really good braking now. Perfect. All right, guys, let's flip this over. Oh, brakes are working. All right, ladies and gentlemen, she's alive. Alright, she's all loaded up, and now to just try and find a clean parking lot to test this thing out in. Okay, hey guys, we gotta like just recap this whole experience. So that was a blast for one thing. I actually ended up having to stop a little bit early. I am cold as hell. You could tell by the red face. But it was starting to hop. So the axle is a little bit out of round, and I swapped on a different set of tires or whatever, onto it from the other one. And that helped with the hopping because it was way more exaggerated with the original axle, original wheels on it. And now with the original axle and with the other set of wheels on it, the hop wasn't as bad. But it eventually got worse. So I think what's happening is it's chewing up different parts of the wheel, and it's making it have that annoying hop. So I got to get a true axle on there, like a straight axle, and see if that will smooth it out with the existing wheels. Just ride it a little bit, and maybe it'll kind of cut down those high spots. If not, I'll just order up some other ones. But anyway, it was so damn fun. So definitely, like, the steering angle I'm getting out of that thing now is huge. It's so much better than the other one that I rode. Just literally removing the steering stoppers on it, like, you get so much more angle, to the point where, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what the angle would be. I should measure it one of these days. It would be fun to figure that out. But anyway, so let's recap. We took a original Razor Drift Kart, the version that's got like the little e-brake on it. Not that you even really need that. So I took one of those guys. I swapped out the 350, 450, whatever watt motor, put in a 3000 watt motor, ditched the 24 volts, went to 80 volts. It's scary fast. It's honestly, I don't know. I think I want to try and put some grippy tires on it once and see how fast it actually goes, but it's scary quick. So yeah, I'll keep modifying these things and I'll make some more videos about it. But I gotta say, like, this was so damn fun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the build. You know, let me know what you think in the comments. And I think in the future here, I mean, the next video that'll probably be out, it's probably gonna be something Ford related, or maybe about the Camaro. But there'll definitely be more Razor Drift Kart content coming out. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on the next one.